Hello, good day, and welcome to today's um, edition of the 30 Days of Code Challenge brought to you by Code Flex. Today, being the 6th, we are going to be looking at Introduction to CSS. So, I'm going to be introducing you to CSS formally today, even though we have been in one way or the other stealing styles, right? Today, we want to formally be introduced to CSS, right? What exactly is CSS? Simple. CSS is what allows us to apply styles to our HTML, right? Cascading Style Sheet is CSS is an acronym for Cascading Style Sheet, and what it does is allows us to apply styles to our HTML. Like I said, when I was introducing us to HTML, I could remember I told us that it is the structure of our web app, right? So I could also remember I was relating HTML to a building that is made up of blocks and cement. And I said that you can decide to erect a building and leave it like that. But if you want it to look beautiful, you begin to apply so many other things to it, like applying paints and all of that. So you apply paint after you have already made your structure, right? HTML is that structure. Okay, HTML is that structure. Then CSS is what allows you. CSS is what you use to apply styles to your HTML. It's what you use to paint your HTML. It's what you use to design your HTML, to add the same way you are adding decoration to your structure, right? That's what CSS does. And we were also told that CSS HTML is made up of building blocks which are HTML tags, and when they come together and contain content, they become what they become HTML elements. Now, if in your building you have a structure and you want to paint it, right? You want to paint your structure. You have the ability to be able to say, okay, I'm painting my room cream. I'm painting the balcony purple. I'm painting the surrounding of the building brown, and I'm also painting the fence brown, and I'm painting the pillars of the fence cream. You know, you have right to those choices. So that's same way you have right to choices to similar choices in your HTML. You can decide to give the whole of your HTML a red color, a red background color, and decide to give it a text or the text color to be white, right? You can also decide to say no. I want my main container to be bluish in color. I want all the buttons to be green in color. I want all my containers to be black, right? You have those choices. You have the right to those choices. The same way you have the right to those choices in painting your building, you have similar rights in applying styles to your HTML, right? So what are that takes us to what allows us to be able to make those choices. In HTML, we can, let me create a HTML boilerplate, and this is, let me change this to the 6, right? So this is actually the 6 and introduction to CSS, right? So I also have a style file created, and now like I said, you should have this right to be able to select the different part of HTML element and apply styles to them. Now, how can you apply styles to your HTML? What allows you to apply styles to your HTML? Do you just create HTML file, create style files, and automatically styles begin to apply to the HTML? No. There are three ways you can apply styles to your HTML, right? You can either apply styles inline, you can apply styles internally, and then you can apply styles externally. What does it mean to apply styles internally? Applying styles internally means that you are selecting the particular element and giving it the attribute of styles and then putting your styles inside the value, as in using your styles to replace the value of that attribute. Like I said, when I was talking about, I think it was, I know that in one of those sections, I made mention of attributes and I told us that what they do and how they help us, how they give us more information um, about an element. And I also told us that they are usually paired, attributes, value, right? They are usually paired like that, but not all. There are some attributes that are also not paired like that. Like if you look at input, inputs have so many attributes that are not paired. You can look at check, it's not paired. You can look at required, it's not paired. So and many more like that. But this one, when you want to apply styles inline, you give it a style attribute. Okay, let's not talk too much. Let me open a live server and share my screen, minimize my screen, right? I want to have my screen like this. So now this is my page, right? And it's currently blank because it's actually blank here, right? So I want to create a header in here like this, and this header should just have a logo. I want it to have logo and just navigation, right? So I want to structure my HTML to look like this. I want to use a container to hold my logo because I want to be able to separate in the future. I want to be able to separate my logo from my navigation, right? So I want to put it inside. I want to give it a class. No, let me just say div. Let me put it inside a div and call it logo. Okay, let me call it code flex, right? So that's my logo. You see that on the screen. Then I want to create my navigation, right? So I want to put my navigation using semantic. I want to put it inside a nav, right? I'm putting it inside a nav, and because I want it to be a list of navigation, right? So I want to be able to decide on what list type I'm going to use. Is it ordered or unordered? Of course, it's going to be an unordered list, right? Because I don't need it numbered. I don't need it. If our situation warrant me to have it numbered, to have it ordered, I will use ordered list. But because I don't need that, I will just use unordered list, which is UL, right? And inside I'm going to have my list elements, right? Which is my li. And because it's a link, I want to be able to click on it and it should take me to another page. I'm going to add an anchor tag, like I said, and it's going to have, because I don't have any link actually for now, I'm going to just put the hashtag there, and this one should be my home, right? I want to have something like this, about 4 of them or 5. Let's say 4 like this, and I want this one to be, sorry, and I want this one to be about, I want this one to be resources, and I want the last one to be contact, right? Contact, like this. So we have this we have this header. This is my header, and I have it like this. So now I want to style this my header in 3 different ways. I want to use inline, I want to use internal, and I want to use external to just explain what I was saying. Now, using internal, like I said, you select the particular element you want to style and apply style attribute to it. So because I want to style my header, I will enter into my header and add attribute of what? Style. Now I have added my attribute of style. It's now left for me to now put value. What value do I want to put for my style? And my value, as since I'm talking about styles, is going to be my style, the properties of my style, and what they should really be as the value of the property, right? So this property, the property of this style I want to apply is background color, right? I want my header to have a color, so I want to give it a background color, right? Now I need to specify what background color I want it to be. So I want to say it should be black. Now you see my header takes black color immediately without any effect. So this is what it means to style something using inline. It's me going to that element and applying style attributes to that place and then giving a style property and value. Simple. Meanwhile, if I want to add more style, because this is just background, imagine that I add background and my logo has disappeared because why? My logo is black. So black in black is not going to show. It's still there. It's just not showing. So I need to now say, okay, now that I have added um, background color, property and semicolon, I now add what property it should be. What's the value of that property, which is black. I now use column. I'm now using semicolon to say this is the end of this particular property and value pair, right? So if I want to add any other thing, it has to be after that semicolon, which is here. So I'm going to say I want to also add color, which is the color of the text that is inside the header. So when I add color like this, it's going to also allow me to add the value of color that I want. So I'm going to just say white. So right now you see that my header, my logo has now come out because it's now having the color of white. It's as simple as that, right? If I want to add 10 different styles, this is how I'm going to separate my property pair value of styles 10 times like that. This makes it really difficult because if I have a very large page, I'm going to have to enter each of the elements and apply styles for them. That makes it really bulky and stressful. And when you have in the future, you have bug, you have problem with your site, or you have something, you have an important update to make, you want to change something, you have to come to line by line and start trying to fix things up, right? So that is why it's not really is possible, but when you know that the style you just want to apply is very few, like I just want to do this to only header, okay, it's very fine, but make sure it's not going to give you problem, because sometimes when you style internally inline and you are now using external style, sometimes you'll be applying styles and it's not working because um, HTML is going to accept the style that is inline, even if you have the similar style somewhere else, right? So you are beginning to apply style externally and it's not reflecting. You have forgotten that you have an inline style that is conflicting with what you are doing. So that's why you have to really decide on what particular mode of styling you want to use for your page. So we are just going to take this off and look at the other one, which is internal styling, right? I want to style this internally. What I need to do is to come to my header and put the style element in there. Remember that inline I use style attribute, but now in header I'm using style element, type style as an element, right? So I have to start it like this and close it. This is my style. So whatever style I want to use is going to be inside my style, inside my header. This time around, I'm not linking anything, but the HTML document understand that the style inside the header is having a connection with the body of the document, right? So that's that. So we cannot talk about styling without talking about um, how we can actually select what we want to style, which takes us straight to CSS selectors, right? There are a lot of CSS selectors. You can use element selectors, you can use type selectors, you can use class selectors, ID selector. There are lots of them. Like I always say, if you want to have an idea of each and every one of CSS selectors, you can always check out CSS documentations like MDN and W3 School. They are there for you. You can always get them from there. So what do we mean when we say CSS selector? Like I was talking about the possibility of you who own a house making a choice of paint for the particular part of your building. You are making a choice, so you should be able to say, I'm I'm applying paint to this room. In the whole building, you are picking out the room and applying cream to it. In the whole building, you are picking out the balcony and applying purple paint color to it. So that is you having an ability to be able to select a particular part and apply style to it. The same thing is acceptable in web development, right? You have the ability to be able to, in your big HTML document, you have the ability to be able to pick the header and give it a background. You have the ability to pick a particular div and give it a background. You have the ability to pick a particular button and give it a background, and it's not going to be a uniform background. You can decide to have a uniform background all through, but you can also decide to have different background for all your elements. That is because you have the ability to select a particular element and apply styles to it. That is what we are going to be looking at um in style and in internal styling and external styling, because in internal styling, you are not actually inside the element. You know, when we're talking about inline styling, I was inside the element, so I don't need to say I'm selecting the element. I am already there, so I just apply my style. But now I'm in header. How does the header know that this style I want to apply should be for, sorry, I'm in the head. How does the style there know that this particular style that I am applying is going for the header? This particular style is going for, I have to tell the style element that this is the element in the HTML body that you should go and select and apply this particular style to. That's why I said you can select element via the element's name. You can pick the element name. I'm saying take room number 6 and apply cream color to it, right? That is me taking the name of the room, just like me saying header. But I can also go into room 8 and use a black charcoal to write something, maybe like 4 parallel lines. And when I want to tell the painter, I say, go to the room with 4 parallel lines and apply cream color paint to that room, right? So I'm no longer using the name of the room. I am specifying something else that says that, okay, there is a mark in that room that you should use to identify the room and apply cream color to it. The same way I can select my HTML element without using the element name, but using the element class name, right? So what I will do is to go to my header and apply a style to it, and apply a class to it and give it a class name. Then I can now select that class name in my header and apply styles to it. Now this is what I mean. I can, the same thing I did inline, I can come here and select my header just like this, right? I have written header. That means I'm saying go to the header, right? So header, then I'm going to open a curly bracket, right? Like this. This is a curly bracket. All the styles I'm going to apply, the PS styles I'm going to apply, background is a property. Red is the value of that property. Color is a property. Green is the value, right? Padding is a property. 10px is the value. These are pair, property value pairs, right? So all these property value pairs are going to be inside this curly bracket, right? So now I'm inside of here. I want to see, I have selected my header. Now I want to give it background. Oh, sorry. Background color of green, right? What happened? Let's refresh. Okay, so you see that the same thing has also happened. Let me take it off, right? You don't have it, but immediately I do that, the same thing happened, right? So I will also do this. Oh, sorry. I can also do the same thing with color, right? And see white, right? And the colors becomes white. The same thing I did inside my HTML and inside my elements. I'm doing it in the head, but I'm using style. So I'm selecting header from my style element in the head. I'm picking header. Go there and pick header and apply those styles to it. Now, like I was saying, if I don't want to use header, I don't want to use header, I can decide to mark header with something by coming to my header here and giving it an attribute of class, right? And giving the class name of my header, my header just like this. So now instead of coming up here to select header, I don't want to use the element name. I want to use my header. I have customized a name for it and I want to use that name to select it. So I will, if I delete all this, now how do you select an element with its class name? You precede the class name with what? With a dot, just dot, right? So I will come here and say, instead of saying header, I'm going to say dot my header. Sorry, dot my header. Oh, and mind you, it has to be, it's case sensitive. It has to be exactly the same. I cannot, if I put, if I change this header to capital letter, it's not going to work. Let's see. Let's try it and see. If I say background color like I did in the first one, I say green, right? Background color green has applied, but it's not showing because I have selected wrongly. This is not the class name that I am applying colors to. So the style cannot identify any class name of such. So it's applying the style to nowhere, right? So if I remove this dash and change this back to H, to small letter, is still the same thing. It's still not identifying it because there are difference. So it has to be exactly the same. And that's why in most cases you have to go select the class name and copy it and paste it for you to make sure that you did not run into any typographical error, right? But immediately I make it exactly the same. You see that perfect, everything work out, right? Everything work out. These are just few ways. I can also come and give it an ID here, ID, and give it just, let me just say name. Let it not look as if I'm using header. Now that I have come and give this particular element, I've given it another mark. I've given it another mark with the name of name, right? So I want to select it. I don't want to select it with my header. I want to select this particular element with this second mark I've given to it, which is name. So how do we select ID? We precede the ID with what? With an hash. Remember that for class you start with dot, but for ID you start with hash. So if I come here now and remove all this, right, I want to select this same header, right? I will, because I want to use the ID, I will start with hash, right? And now say name, right? Now I want to apply my background color again, right? And I say green. It's going to apply, right? It's going to apply. It's just like that, right? There, sorry. There is nothing more than that. So I can decide to now start adding more and more colors. Like I want to change the text color to say white or red or whatever color I want to use. There are actually different ways of applying styles, of applying colors to your document, right? These are just default colors that are existing, right? You can use the hex code, you can use S code, you can use RGB, you can use RGB, you can use HSL. You know, it all depends on your projects and the usefulness of the particular approach you want to use to apply your style, right? So that's just all about introduction to CSS and CSS selectors. Like I said, there are a lot more CSS selectors, right? There are a lot of other CSS selectors, but if we want to treat them one after the other, we are going to spend like we are going to spend a long time, trying to fix only CSS. But understand the basis of selecting and understand that some selectors have higher specificity than each other. Like if I give this particular header, the same header name and the same ID name, right? And I select it with the class name and ID name. If I select it with the same the class name and I select it with ID name, and I apply the same CSS property to these two. The CSS property in the ID is going to override the CSS property in the class. The reason is that CSS IDs have higher specificity than CSS classes. They have, let me use authority, they have more authority. When you hear specificity in CSS, that's just what it means. One selector have more authority than the other. So when a lower authority selector talk, right, and a higher authority selector comes and speak, the higher authority selector is going the talk of the higher authority selector is going to override the lower authority selector, right? Just like ranking, right? When a junior military man say go and a senior military man say come, you have to come. You understand? So that's exactly what we talk about when we are talking about specificity. For instance, if I come now, if I have given, okay, now we have these two now. If I come up here or even down here and still select that same class that is there, I say, what's the name of that class? My header. I'm selecting it right, right? I'm giving the background color of red, right? It's not applying. It's not applying. It's not because it cannot apply, but because the higher authority has chosen green, right? If I take this out and assume that the higher authority did not say anything about background color, right? You see that red now apply. So ID have a higher authority compared to class, right? I hope that makes sense to you. So don't forget to always like and share whenever you lay your hands on these videos. It's very important you share, you like, share, and comment so that every other persons out there can also partake from what we are doing here, right? Okay. So I'm trying to look at whether we can talk about something else before we go. So we can also apply different see, there are CSS selectors, there are CSS properties that are used for just editing. This is the reason why I said, when I was saying, I think somebody was saying that, why are we not talking about lot of HTML tags since we have a lot of them? The reason is simple. Most of HTML tags are hardly even useful anymore, right? I can't imagine myself using the bold tag to bolding a text in HTML when I can just come to CSS and apply font weight of bold to that element. CSS has taken a lot of job that you would have been able to just do with HTML, right? So that's why we didn't have to dwell so much in HTML tags, right? But situation can still make you use HTML tag. There are conditions that HTML tag work best, right? You will discover that it's even more stressful for you to go and use CSS, right? So, but when you have situations like that, you can just key into your HTML tag and just use it. And like I will always say, you can always get HTML tag in HTML documentation that you have in MDN and W3 School. It's not only MDN and W3 School. I'm just very familiar with these two. There are lots of HTML documents, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript documents that are existing out there, and they are on the internet for everybody to have access to. No restriction. Okay, so there are also other CSS properties that allow us to edit text typography, that allow us to carry out typographic function on our HTML document, right? So you can decide to make a text big, you can decide to make it smaller, you can change the way the text look, using font families, you can a lot, right? So I want to come to my header now. For instance, this is my header, right? I want to give it now. I hope you are seeing my screen, right? You can see how I want you to notice, to quickly notice a change in there. I want to say font family. That means I want to change the way the text actually look, right? I want to change the way those tests look. If you look at it, let me expand this screen very well. You see that you see that it's looking like this, right? Now I want to apply a font family. I don't like, let's say I don't like the way it's looking. I don't like the way it's having curve, some extra flat edges. I want to give it a font family. I want to change the font family to maybe sans serif, right? You see the way everything changed immediately. These are typographical properties. Typography properties that allows you to manipulate how your tests look, test colors and all of that, test decoration. They are all used for these purposes, right? You see the way everything just changed immediately. I can decide to also add font size because I want to increase the font. I can also add where is it, fonts sorry, font size of say 60 pixel, 60 px, right? And you see how big it became, right? Sorry, I actually zoom in my screen. Let me take it back to 100%, right? So if I did not add this, if I didn't add this font size, you see that it's actually smaller. You see it was very small, but immediately I added that, it increases, right? It increases. So there are also what is referred to as universal selector, right? There is universal selector in CSS. What does universal selector do? Universal selector goes into your CSS, sorry, goes into your HTML, and take all the elements of your HTML and apply particular styles to them. All the elements of your HTML, one after the other, and then apply styles to them. It's just like me saying header. You know what I've done since is header, right? I can go into the header and say div because the first element there is div. I say div, I'll give it another style. Then I go into the UL, I give it another style. I go into nav, I give it style. I go into LI, I give it style. I go into a tag, I give it style, right? It's me manually selecting each of all these elements and giving them style. But if this style is the same, do I need to select each of them? There should be a way I will be able to select all of them at once, right? And apply the same style to them. So that is what universal selector does. Universal selector is usually done like this. I will just say asterisk. I've selected everything. That is universal selector, right? And I'm saying that okay, I'm selecting universal selector. But the funniest thing about universal selector is that it has very low authority. Very, very low authority. Now I'm going to apply color here and I'm going to see red, right? Now, you see what I'm saying. Instead of having to select one element, select this one, select this one, select that one, and begin to give them color one after the other, I have just used my universal selector to select all elements and apply red color to them at once. This is the same thing I would do by selecting nav, selecting div, selecting logo, selecting all and giving them a style a color of red. But I have just done it with just one line of code, right? So that is universal selector. Most of the time, styles that are applied to universal selector are styles that are universal. And that's why it's easy for you to use your universal selector for resetting your HTML default styles, because as this HTML is now, there are default styles that comes with it that you may not be seeing right? You can imagine that my UL is very gapped from the logo. Codeflex is far from home. You can see that I didn't apply any style that say it should do that, but by default it has done that, right? That is why it's important for you to always reset your HTML to remove all those default spaces that HTML felt they are right? You have to remove them first so that you will not be having confliction in the future when you are adding styles to elements, right? So things like padding are usually done here. General padding like this, I give it a padding of 0. You see that something happened, right? Everything has now clicked to the corners of my header. Then I can also give it a margin. I can also reset my margin from the default to all of them to be also 0, right? And now you see that the gap has reduced. This is ideally how it's supposed to be until I now go to each of the element and now say have margin, right? So if I come to my UL, right? UL for instance, let me come here and use element selector. So sorry, nav, and use element selector to select my nav and give it a margin, top margin, right? Margin top of, let's say 2 rem. Sorry, I give it a top margin of 2 rem. Now you see that it has actually gapped back, but this time around, it is assumed that yes, I am the one who wants to apply that gap, that margin. Sorry, I am the one who want to apply that margin, not HTML giving me a default margin, not CSS, no, not the document giving me a default margin. I choose. That's why I first of all reset it to normal. I remove all that comes by default, and now so that whatever margin I'm now giving is my choice, I now know that I am the one who added margin to it, right? Without resetting this, I'm going to have bigger margin compared to this. Let's take for instance, if I remove the reset margin, are you seeing that I have bigger margin? So I am having a margin of my own added to to the default margin that they have given to me. So I'm not going to get exactly the margin I added, right? That is why it's good to always reset your margin. This is just an introduction to CSS, and this is just an introduction. So we can also there are also some other quick one, like okay, I want to center this. Look at is at the side. Probably I want it to be at the center, right? I want it to be at the center. This my logo has become too big. I just use it to explain. So let me take it back to, let's say, 30 or even 10. Font size 10 pixel. Oh, that's too small. Sorry, I'm not really used to PX again. So this is it. Let's say I want to take the, I actually want this thing to be at the center of the screen, right? So I want to be seeing it at the center. What I will just do is, what's my header? My header is having is something, there's something here selected with an ID of name. So when I come to my HTML, I see what is having an ID of name. I discover that it's header. Okay, I say that's my header. But what I want to place at the center is my nav, right? I want my nav to be at the center, of my header. So what I will do is to select my nav, right? Which I already did here. I'll give it a width. Let me give it a width of, say, I want it to have a width of let's say 100 px, right? Then I can now give it a margin. Let me remove this margin. I want to give it margin now. I say margin. Remember I use margin top, right? There are short way of writing most CSS properties, right? I want to use margin now, right? Okay, sorry. So I'm using margin now, of which what I was using before was margin top, right? I am specifying that this margin should only be at the top. But if I did not, I can also specify that it should be at the bottom. I'll say margin bottom, margin left, margin right, right? But if I don't want to specify the side the margin should be at, right, I will just say margin. So when I just say margin and I give it a single value, it becomes all the sides. But if I give it two values, the first value be top and bottom, the second value be left and right, right? So now I want to give this a margin of top because I don't want to even have anything to do with top. What I want to see is left and right, right? Because I want it to be at the middle. So I'm going to give it a margin top of 0, left and right of automatic auto, right? And now you see that I have my navigation at the center of the screen. So I will also do the same thing to the header, to the logo. Now I don't just want to select div because in the future I might have a lot of div in my markup. So I want to give it a class name so that I'll be able to select that particular class name and know that this class name is only for logo, right? So I want to give logo a class name of what? Logo. So I can now come here and select logo because it's a class name. I'll precede it with what? With a dot and say dot logo should be what? Dot logo should have a width of 100px2. Don't forget that you need to have a specified width for this to work, right? And say margin of 0 and auto, right? Sorry, my PS is not correct. So you see that I have everything there, right? But they are still not properly at the center, right? So what I can do is to give it a test align of center. So I want to align my test to where? To the center. So it's going to be like this, and I will do the same thing here. Test align center, right? And it's going to be like this, right? The issue we're having is this bullet this bullet, because I said list on ordered list. If I change it to ordered list, for instance, I change it to OL, which is ordered list. If I change it to this, it's going to be numbered, right? That is ordered list. But because I'm using an unordered list, it's going to be bullet. So there should be a way I can remove that bullet because I don't really, sorry, let me share my screen. I'm not really enjoying the way it is there because I don't need it there. So I'll have to remove it. So if I want to remove that, I'll have to go to my LI and remove the style from LI because it's actually there because there is list. If I remove this list now, right? Let me just remove this first one. If I remove this list, if I remove this list, you will see that it's no longer there. It's actually there because it's a bullet, because it's a list. It's one of the defaults that comes with unordered list, right? So but because I still need it as a list because it's inside, it's actually a list of item, and I want to use semantic HTML as much as I can, so it has to still be a list. So what I will do is to find a way to remove them even while still using list. So I need to select my LI and give it list style of none. So once I do that, you see that it's going to disappear. As simple as that, right? Simple as that. Then now we can now maybe remove all this, and everything will now look a little bit good to the eyes. So this is where we are going to stop today. Thank you very much for being a part of today's section, and don't forget to like, share, and comment as well. All right, goodbye and see you in the next section. Bye.